Hello and welcome to the Situation Report today. This is the show where we do our very best to give you the information and perspectives you need to navigate an ever-changing culture. My name is Jeremy Stolniker. I am your host today, and I am very excited today to be able to bring to you an interview with a good friend of mine. I've been blessed in my life with some good friends, and particularly through the work that I have the opportunity to participate in with the Mighty Oaks Foundation. We work with veterans and active duty service members and first responders. And because of that, I've gotten to know a lot of wonderful people, and I get to work with a lot of wonderful people. Today, I am going to share an interview with you, with one of those people. John Davis has been working for the Mighty Oaks Foundation for several years. We've been friends for quite a while, and his story is amazing. Served in the United States military, served as a police officer, and has recently written a book that not only tells his story, and it is an incredible story, and it's been used by God to help many folks, particularly in the first responder community. The book tells his story, but it also is a book that provides a story that gives hope. So it's not just about his life, it is about how to move forward when other people who are reading the book have struggled in their own lives. And I'm very grateful that he is getting this story out there. It's powerful. It really is a testimony to the grace of God, to the ability we have to move beyond even bad decisions in our past or the decisions of others that impacted us in our past. And you're going to hear some of that today, but I would encourage you to not only listen to this interview, but then go and find the book. This is my interview with John Davis as we talk about his book, Man on the Roof. John, thanks for coming on.
Oh, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's kind of funny to interview you. We've been friends for a long time, but we're in two different states right now, so this is the only way we can have this conversation. But man, I appreciate it. Your story is incredible. You're someone that I've looked up to for a long time and have respected for a long time, and there are a lot of reasons for that, personal reasons and others, but one of those is your story and just where you came from. And you have recently written a book telling that story. And because I know you did that so that you could help other people who are struggling with their own story and trying to get through some difficult things. And that's what we want to talk about today is the book. So talk a little bit about what motivated you to not only tell your story, but to write it down and try to get it out there in book form. You've been telling your testimony and telling your story for a long time, and it's been very, very helpful to a lot of people. What caused you to take the next step, which is I'm going to put it down, I'm going to write it, I'm going to struggle through that and get it out to whoever will buy and read a book in this day and age where people don't read anymore?
Well, it's a pretty easy answer. When I got out here to Texas last February, I think it was like within the first month, I was over at Chad's house. I looked at me and he goes, John, you need to write a book. So I said, so I thought about it for years, for sure. And I think over the years, and I heard all these stories, being at Mighty Oaks, hearing it, we all live and we think, oh man, I lived a cool life, right? I did this. But then the longer I was in Mighty Oaks and the more stories I heard and the more testimonies about what people have done, I mean, it honestly really humbled me. I thought about writing a book for years. But then after hearing guys' stories, I'm just like, man, it's pretty amazing the things that people have been through. It's given me perspective on my own life too. So I kind of put it on the back burner as far as writing a book. And then when Chad said it, I really took it to heart and I thought about it. Yeah. And then I started thinking about the aspect of, I've shared my story so many times, and it's not the things I've done, but really what Christ has done in my life and how he's picked me up from where I was to where I am today, which is living a life of peace, not perfect, and having joy and having purpose. And I know my story has affected other men that I've served at the Mighty Oaks programs, and I've seen it help them and them not feel alone and not feel isolated and be able to move forward. So, which has encouragement and that fact and seeing it, I dove right in.
Your story is very helpful just on a personal level, just kind of your personal journey and talking about, even your childhood and then getting into law enforcement and some of your relationship struggles and maybe hitting the low moments and then God kind of bringing you back around, right? And And it's an amazing story, but it is also a story that is very much focused on law enforcement and the challenges of law enforcement, which I think is especially important right now. I don't know that we've ever lived, maybe we have, I don't know, not in my memory, lived at a point in time where the public assault on law enforcement was as much as it is. And I know there have been other times in history where the general population didn't have a high view of the police or whatever, but it seems to be almost in vogue to not like police officers. In my community, we have a great community here in Murrieta, which you live here as well, loves the police. That's not a problem we have, but in a lot of other communities it is. You're in Texas. I know there's a different respect for law enforcement in Texas, but I think police officers generally across the country can feel very isolated and very alone. Can you talk about that for a little while? Because I think that is, I don't know that we always get a hold of that. A lot of people don't know our story, but we've known each other for a long time. And my son is going through the police academy right now. And a big influence on him has been you, and a big piece has come to me to know people like you who can speak into his life, but not everyone has that. Maybe you can talk about that for a minute, because that connection is so important.
Yeah, I definitely can. I mean, thinking back to my time in law enforcement, and of course the people I was taking to jail weren't happy about me being there.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
But as far as the media and the general population, there's a lot of support. So over the years, especially these last couple of years with the assault on police officers, specifically in the media, and how they're talked about and how the things are highlighted when they make mistakes, opposed to what they're doing right. I can't imagine being a police officer in these times. And that's something I've seen a lot the last couple of years at the Mighty Oaks programs with our first responders, is just that aspect of it and how much it hurts these guys hearing this and this narrative about police officers and who they are has been cast upon like the nation. People just listen to it, and that's truth, because the media says it and it's on the internet, so It's got to be right. So those guys living today and doing the job, and they're still out there every day risking their lives just like I did. No matter what those people say about them, if they get a call, they're going to go there and they're going to put their life on the line. And at the same time, those same people are against them and defund the police and we're the bad guys. Yeah, I can't imagine like working and experience of what these guys are experiencing right now.
What impact, and this is something, I don't think we always understand this, but in speaking to people in the public, in the community, if you were to explain to them the impact of their perception and their support or lack of it for law enforcement and the impact that has on the police officers, how would you talk about that with them? People who just don't get it. They don't understand the impact that their opinion has on the men and women who serve.
Well, I think, and I just thought about this, maybe the comparison would be like the Vietnam era soldiers who came back from there and they were spit on and treated the way they were after Vietnam, opposed to the current wars, especially like Desert Storm, where we're there for like a week or two. We came back and we're like these heroes, and there's parades, and that felt great. I mean, honestly, I got off the plane and, people are out there and they're shouting and doing, waving the flag. That was an amazing feeling, opposed to those guys in Vietnam. And I mean, we did the same thing. We went to combat, risked our lives, and we came back with much different greetings. And that's what those police officers today are under. So, man, it's hard to put myself in their shoes, but I do feel it. When I watch, I actually try not to watch the news too much, because I start getting angry just hearing these things that aren't true. I even had and this is an example. I had a friend. Actually, a couple. They went to church with us, and the wife told Quinny. She looked at Quinny. She's like, "Quinny, like, why do police officers kill black people?" And I'm like, "Unbelievable! Like, do you understand what you just said? It's so far from the truth of what police officers are and their actions every day, and the amount of restraint they use, and the amount of service they do, and the things they do for the community that nobody sees. We don't go out there telling everybody, hey, man, we helped this family, or we helped this kid, or we helped this abused mom. And, on Christmas, they had no presents, so we showed up. I mean, there's countless stories of helping the community that's not put out there.
your story, starts as probably one of those kids who needed help from the community. You found a lot of help from coaches and others in sports and people in the community who poured into you and then gave you an opportunity to move forward a little bit. Maybe tell some of your story. I'm sure this is in the book, but tell some of your story. It's so helpful just to hear it.
Yeah, like you mentioned, my childhood was rough. It was a very dysfunctional home I grew up in, and it was pretty violent, and I was on a violent path pretty young age. And as you mentioned, finding sports, finding coaches, I grew up without a father, so I didn't really have a father figure in my life. But when I joined these sports teams, and specifically football, and I got these men I could actually look up to, and it literally gave me purpose, and it gave me a direction, and it gave me a reason for not getting in trouble.
Right.
Doing my homework, going to school, and it just gave me a family and a brotherhood that was just critical for me at a young age, and it really drove me. And my drive as a kid literally came from that and wanting to make it, because and I go into this pretty deep in the book about going over to friends' houses that had a normal family, had a happy family, and I saw that, and I just wanted that. It was just something I never experienced. So sports to me was just not something I enjoyed doing and to get out my aggression, but it was my way out. And I knew if I could make it, I equated that, success in sports with a happy family. And from a very early age, that's what drove me. And people wonder why I'm so driven still in But it's rooted in that and my childhood, and thankfully and thank God that I had a positive direction to go in, and instead of the direction I was headed, and that really kept me out of a lot of trouble. Stopped me from doing some things that a crazy young kid does, especially in the neighborhood I grew up in and the friends I had. But it kept me on track for the most part growing up. And I continued that, through high school until I joined the military. And then I had my new brotherhood, my new family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because people that know you know that you're a coach at heart. I think if I had to use one word to define you, that would be the word is coach. You're always bringing people along and teaching and trying to make people better. And I think all that goes back to where you found identity and purpose. Oh,
absolutely. Like coaching, and people ask me that, well, why do you coach? And it's so easy for me to say because, when I was young, I was pretty good in football. I was a decent athlete, but I was pretty crazy, so that makes a pretty good football player. And the coaches and like you said, them pouring into me changed my life. And I always wanted to give back. From the time I was a little kid, I knew when I was done, I was going to give back. And I've coached numerous things from football to track, as a strength coach for a number of years in high school, and now it's jiu-jitsu. But that's my opportunity. And literally those things are just vehicles where I get to sit down with people and talk to them and just encourage them and share Christ if the situation opens up to that. And it's pretty amazing. Even out here in Texas, man, I have a couple of my friends I coach youth football with that are training with me now. And I've just had some opportunities to sit down there and talk about my life and just talk about what God's done in my life and the purpose I have. And man, nothing's more rewarding to me than being able to give back and just kind of share the past. And that's something, I heard that phrase in Mighty Oaks that I love, that we can never change the past, but when we serve and we help other people, we give it meaning. And we never forget the past, but it changes that past from things that keep you down, things that would stress me out and just, you feel guilt and about to motivation, like fire. Like I look back in my past today, and I always do this. I don't forget the past, because number one, it keeps me humble. If I think I'm something, I just look back in the past and I'm like, no, you have nothing to be prideful about. Right. It's humility, but it also gives me fire and drive to move forward and everything I'm doing, pushing forward, looking back at the past, and then being able to take that and use that with, whether it's adults or I got some 6-year-olds, my little Joey. Well, he's 7. He's 7 and crazy. Just talking to me. I had about 3 or 4 6-year-olds, and then Joey talking to them yesterday about life. And man, I feel so blessed to be able to do that. Yeah. And as you said, it all stemmed from what I was given, and that's definitely a ministry for me that I'll do to the rest of my life, whatever that looks like.
How do we shift our perspective from seeing our past as something to regret and to feel bad about and to become depressed over, lost opportunity. How do we shift our perspective from that to seeing it as something that can be used to help other people?
Man, that I don't want to say it's easy, but it's like I just said, looking back at it, learning from it. I mean, that's where experience comes from. Experience, as we know, sucks. I got a lot of experience, and a lot of us, and it literally did. It would overwhelm me at times. Even when I first started Mighty Oaks, I think back to my past and dealing with it so much, and you just get that. I would get this overwhelming feeling, and I guess you could call it anxiety or guilt, or just like, man, what I could do if I could just change the past. And I always think about that too, like with my older boys especially, like what I would do. I would give my life in a second if I could change the past and prevent all the hurt that I caused them. But I know I can't, and that's a fact. Well, what can I do today? I can still move forward. And a big thing that I have, and I always say this, and I always think about this, is I lost my boys looking up to me. That look they have when they're young, like that's my hero, that's my dad. Well, I lost that, and rightfully so. I want them to look at me with those same eyes. I want them to be proud of me.
Yeah.
So that's a huge drive for me. Every day it is. I don't know if you remember, but my oldest son, John Michael, he played at Boise State, and I used to have his jersey over my desk. And people do that because, you remember that. And people used to think, you're proud of your son, which I was, but that's not why I had it up there, because I used to look up there and just remember I failed him during those times, and that drove me. Like when I was sitting in the office, I'd look up there and be like, this is why I'm doing this right now. I'm going to use those mistakes to help other men. So I guess more to the answer to your question, like how do we take that stuff from the past and use it today, right? Just use it for motivation, for drive to go forward. And again, every time I get to share my story and it helps another man kind of change that course from one of the same course that I was on, or similar, or losing their family and just hurt and anger and pain, and shifts it a little bit and gives them some hope. And it's given them meaning. And it's never going to change the past. The past will never go away, and I never want to forget the past. But again, today, and it's taken some time for sure, Jeremy, to get to the point where it doesn't like grip me, where I feel like it's hard to move forward. But that past keeps on pushing me, and again, it keeps me humble, man. To realize, man, this is where I was, and I don't. What they call that, self-loathe, or, false self-deprecation. I'm not doing that at all. But the truth is I made a lot of mistakes, and I've moved past that, but I'm not going to forget that, because that, again, it pushes me to help other people and hopefully change their course, especially when I come across men that have like young boys, man. Like sometimes I'm like, I want to choke you, man. Listen to what I'm saying. You don't want to go through what I went through, because it's not about us, but the people around you that you hurt. And you alter their lives because of your action, and you cause such pain in other people that, if you would have asked me back when I was a young police officer, what's most important? God is, my wife, and my family. I had the answers down, but my life and my actions did not reflect that. Man, if I could go back, but I can't. But I can sit here today and I can talk to you and I can say, man, your life needs to reflect that. You got to understand that you make these decisions. Let me give you an example. This is the decisions I made. This is the path I walked, which wasn't aligned in my life with God. And this is where I ended up. And it wasn't about me. Again, it was about the people around me, as many people as I hurt.
Just when you thought it couldn't get any better, Mike Lindell with MyPillow is launching the MyPillow 2.0. When Mike invented MyPillow, it had everything you could ever want in a pillow. Now, nearly 20 years later, he discovered a new technology that makes it even better. The MyPillow 2.0 has the patented adjustable fill of the original MyPillow, and now with a brand new fabric that is made with a temperature regulating thread. The MyPillow 2.0 is the softest, smoothest, and coolest pillow you'll ever own. For our exclusive listeners, the MyPillow 2.0 is buy one, get one free offer with promo code SITREP. MyPillow 2.0 temperature regulating technology is 100% made in the USA and comes with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. Just go to MyPillow.com and click on the radio listener square to buy the one, get one free offer. Enter promo code SITREP or call 800-870-0283 to get your MyPillow 2.0 now. I've heard you talk before about when you became a police officer. You were in the military, you were in Panama, you were in Desert Storm, left the military, became a police officer. That really, you were very involved in church, and you were very focused on, I'm going to be a police officer, I'm going to serve the community, I'm going to love my family, I'm going to live for God. And then a change happened. As you talk to people, particularly in law enforcement, in that environment that is so dark so much of the time and difficult, and you spend so much time away from home and all of the issues that those in law enforcement deal with, what are some of the decisions that you made along the way that took you away from what you said was important? You said God is important, my family is important, focus is important. What were some of the decisions you made that took you down a path that you'd later have to recover from?
Well, they're very similar to like what we call the 4 pillars at Mighty Oaks, or the 4 B's, right? Being in the Word, being in prayer, being in fellowship at church, and then being in contact with a cornerman or a brother.
Yeah. Yep.
So I absolutely failed in all 4 of those when I was a police officer. When I started, as you mentioned, I was walking with God. I was actually teaching a Bible study. The city I worked in was right next to the city I grew up in, and man, it was actually growing. It was pretty big. There's like all my old friends. I think all my friends heard like, that crazy guy that was in the military, now he's a cop teaching a Bible study. Like, what's this?
Bible study?
What's this all about? But I loved doing that, and I enjoyed it. And some of my friends got saved, and it was just amazing. And some of the people there were like, "Hey, Johnny, you gonna be a pastor?" I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna be a pastor. I love Jesus, and I'm gonna share about it. But, right. I'm gonna throw down at work." Right. So that was the initial stages of it, and I was in church. I was reading the Bible, and I was still at work, throwing down with my guys. At work, I wasn't a Bible thumper like slamming my partners. But if the situation arose, I definitely shared. I mean, I'd get in a fight with a client, a suspect. Hey, if it opened up, I'd talk to them about it. So that's where I was at the beginning. And what happened, I think it was just kind of what happens to all police officers. It's like that daily grind, the daily seeing that carnage of this world, from homicides to domestic abuse to horrific accidents, from kids get killed. And as you're seeing this stuff, because we're men and it's not supposed to bother us and it's not supposed to affect us, we just kind of look at it and we just push it down and we just move on. I talk about one story when a brother shot his brother with a 30-30, blew his brains all over. It was just a horrific scene. And I remember coming out of that scene and all of us just looked at each other and we all probably were feeling the same thing. And it wasn't just the murder, it was just like the families and the screams. You'll never forget the screams of calls like that. It was a huge family and it was just an insane call, but we just looked at each other and none of us said anything. We just got in our cars and we went to the next call. And you do that daily, and you can't be overly emotional because you got to do your job. But you take those things and you push them down and you keep pushing them down. And you see something and you push it down, and then at the same time you start getting a little resentment, and that starts building up, and then you get bitter, and then you get angry, and then at the same time when this was happening to me and seeing all this, my relationship with my wife was struggling. It wasn't great, but it was getting worse, and I wasn't making that a priority, even though, after God, she was the most important, but absolutely my life didn't reflect that. I stopped going to church because I was working weekend graveyards, so that was kind of an easy reason not to go to church. Once in a while, maybe I'd pray, but it was, half-hearted. And one thing that I never did, probably from day one, looking back, even when I was walking with God, is I never had somebody that I was totally accountable to, totally transparent to. I had certain friends that I would say some things, other friends I'd tell other things, but that was one thing looking back that I never had. I never was not able to, because I had people out there that would have listened to, would have encouraged me in the right way, but I never had somebody that when things were going wrong and I was feeling something inside or struggles with my wife or whatever it was, that I could reach out to and really be open and transparent. Because in that time, and just men in general, like, we can't do that because that's weakness. If I tell somebody, look, it bothers me, I just saw this 4-year-old boy get destroyed by a car and die in front of me, that bothered me, because that's weakness, which is crazy, right? It's crazy even to say that, of course, unless I was insane and a sociopath, of course it's going to bother me,
Right.
maybe I am.
Right.
But yeah, the stuff bothers you, but we can't show it, right? That we're not supposed to show it. We shouldn't say it to anybody. That really, really bothered me. I'm dreaming about it, and I'm thinking about it, and I can't look at my own kids without looking at this dead kid I saw in the back of an ambulance. And you just keep pushing those things down, and eventually it's going to spill over. Like the analogy we use about a rucksack, right? You keep pushing stuff down, and eventually it's going to spill over. And as you mentioned, my childhood trauma, the physical and sexual abuse I dealt with as a kid, along with everything else I saw, and then you add in the military, and then you add in the law enforcement. So at a relatively quick amount of time, 5 years into my law enforcement career, man, I was on top of that roof, hence the book, Man on the Roof, and I thought that I was going to die. It was a lifetime of trauma. It wasn't just like the 5 years of law enforcement. It's like but the law enforcement definitely accelerated all those issues.
Man, there's a lot there that could be unpacked. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the title, and everyone needs to read the book, but there was a long series of events that got you onto the top of the roof. Can you just, without giving away everything, talk about why the title and what that refers to?
Yeah, it was a call. The Man on the Roof was a call. It was a suspicious person that we chased on top of the roof. And after we had the guy in custody, I was on top of this roof, standing there full of pride and arrogance and thinking I was something, to now I understand it was probably a massive anxiety attack, panic attack, something of that nature, where I thought I was going to die. Literally, I had to squat down. I thought I was going to fall off that roof. And that was a critical point in my life, because when that happened, I knew something was wrong. I knew something was wrong, absolutely. It wasn't a physical thing. It was something inside me where I just literally, I felt like I was circling the drain, and it was just darkness. And I knew I should have got off. I should have got off that roof, and I should have met with a pastor, somebody, and talk to him. Hey, this is what happened, and this is what's going on, and this is everything that's going on inside me. But I didn't do that. I got off, pushed the stuff down, and I just moved forward. And that was such a critical point, because that decision led me into, shortly after that, getting my third shooting, and my life got really, really bad for a number of years. It was some, very, very dark years of not caring about living and dying, being in relationships outside my wife, just not caring about life, like being, thinking about killing myself all the time. But I didn't want to do it that way, because I don't want to be a coward. So I'm going to do it at work. And I was just working like a madman, not being safe, definitely working on the edge, to say the least. I can't even say some of the actions, nothing illegal. They're out there. There's nothing illegal, man. But I was hunting, like one of my sergeants used to call me and he's like, John, man, you're like a pit bull, because all you do is you drive around, you look for people to take to jail, you look for hot calls. And I'm just like, hey, Sarge, I'm just keeping everybody safe. And, it's just me. And that was my drug then. It was either the violence of work or a woman, or, when I wasn't at work, it was keeping myself busy, because if I found myself not just sitting there, just thinking, that's when, thoughts got really dark, and some bad thoughts were in my mind of like, I just can't live this way.
What finally brought you to a place where, you started to move back into a relationship with God and allowing God to work in your life? And you're married, you have kids, you have a great family, you're serving other people. I know that's a long process, but what was the event or series of events that got you to that point where you started to turn things around, or went like, this is not good enough, I can't do this anymore, I've got to go a different direction? What happened there?
And that was a long process. It's a long process, and I'll try to summarize it. My last shooting I got involved in, after my that was in April of 2003. You have to see your psych, and as I saw my psych, he kind of suggested that I take some time off, and I was like, that's cool, man, it's tax-free money, I'll take a little vacation. Yeah, that was literally my thought. And during that time, I was kind of thinking, about myself a little bit, about my life, and just really didn't recognize who I was. Because the things I wanted in life, I wanted a family, I wanted to be a man of God. That was clear. 17, I became a Christian. So at 17, I knew who I wanted to be. It's never changed. I wanted to be a man of God, and I wanted a happy family. And after that third shooting and taking that time, thinking about my actions and who I'd become, I didn't want to live that way. So I ended up retiring, and man, and wanted to live that life. And I started doing it, but the huge mistake I made is there wasn't a heart change. It was all behavior changes. There was no accountability. There was no admission to my wife what I'd done. There was no asking God for forgiveness. It was like, I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to live this life. And I did for a number of years. Eventually it fell apart and ended up in divorce and other relationships, and got married, got divorced. It's always smart to get married again after being divorced real quick. That lasted 6 months. Right. That was real successful. But anyways,
sure.
Where I got was basically everything, pretty much everything lost, in a point where one of my sons wouldn't talk to me. The other one, we had talked, but it wasn't a great relationship. I was renting a room from a friend of mine, a kid I'd coached in high school. So pretty much my life was in shambles. Barely hanging on to my job that I had. And during that time, I came to this point. Initially, this one incident when I was thinking about everything I'd been through, it's like, man, I was abused as a kid, and I dealt with this, and I went to combat, and I was a police officer. Nobody knows, and as I'm doing this, almost getting mad at people for their opinions of me, the word that hit me was a word that we don't want to be called, and that's victim. And I would literally sitting there in that situation was thinking I was acting like a victim. And I think God gave me that word, because when that came to my head and that was the truth, how I was acting, I was like, man, I'm not going to be a victim. So that was the point I was at. And that was the first time, and I was 44 years old at the time, that I took accountability and I didn't make excuses. And again, I've said this a lot, my life was tough. I know that. I know physical abuse shouldn't happen as a kid, sexual abuse as a kid, men, women, it shouldn't happen as a kid. And seeing the other things I saw as a kid, they're tough things for sure. And I understand that. Military and combat, and the amount of death that we see in that, the amount of death I saw in Desert Storm, the amount of death I saw as a police, all those things are tough and rough, right? But the truth was that I knew the truth. And I knew who I wanted to be. And my life didn't reflect that. And I made mistakes. And I always had the choice. And I made the wrong choice. So it was just taking accountability for my life. And that really was what it was. And then, of course, I got down on my knees and I prayed and I asked God for forgiveness. I reached out to my first wife, and, we didn't, it was still not a good thing, but I did that and asked for forgiveness. And I'm like, man, I'm going to work on my relationship with my boys. And that took some time. And it wasn't easy after that. It wasn't like, oh, all right, everything's good now, man. It was a process, not without some more mistakes and some speed bumps, man. But man, I just kept pushing. I just kept my head down and, my eyes up on God and kept pushing forward.
And John, again, I appreciate you, and I'm very thankful for you in my life and the life of my family. Your relationship with my son is an important relationship for me because, as you mentioned, it's having the right men speak into your kids' lives, and you've been one of those for my son. And I'm thankful for that. But I'm really grateful that you tell this story. I know it's not easy, and it's crazy how difficult it can be to tell a story like this, because you're kind of peeling back the layers, right? And pulling back the curtain on what has been hidden, and you're kind of sharing things for people to see. And your wife, Quinny, allowing that to even be part of her story, because clearly it is. But I believe it's going to help so many people. So thank you so much for doing it. Give the title one more time and where people will be able to find it in the next couple days, hopefully. By the time this airs, it's going to be available. So where can people find it?
Well, the name of the book is Man on the Roof. It's going to be available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and then I just heard on Target as well. We're awesome. Should be in the next few days when it'll be available. But I'm excited for that.
That's great.
The world's going to see it. It's out there now.
World's going to see it. It's out there. You can't stop it. By the time this episode of this podcast airs, it'll be available, and we'll make sure that links are in the show notes so you can find it as well. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
John, as always, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Many of our veterans feel they need to fight their battles alone. This self-isolation has led to the staggering statistic of more than 20 veterans taking their lives every day. The mission of Mighty Oaks is to eradicate the veteran suicide epidemic and help our warriors change their legacies. We've been able to help over 4,000 veterans and first responders by equipping them with the tools they need to live the lives they were created to live. Our faith-based, peer-to-peer approach has one of the highest success rates of any program available today, offering hope and understanding to those who need it most. By aligning their lives to biblical principles, these men and women are able to lead their families, their communities, and our nation. It's your generosity that can make a difference in the lives of the men and women who have fought for our country and our freedoms. Now that they're home, don't let them fight alone. Learn more at mightyoaksprograms.org. Appreciate John, and again, very thankful that he would not only share that story. If you've never shared your story publicly, it is very difficult, and John has told that story many, many times, but now putting it down in written form so that others can get a hold of it and it can be used, that story can be used to help them. So thankful for him, thankful for his willingness to do that, and I hope that you will right now. The link is in the show notes. Go and buy a copy of the book, read it for yourself, share it with others, and they will be helped as well. If you have not yet subscribed to the podcast, please take some time to do that. Now you can subscribe and then go over to YouTube. You can find our YouTube channel. On YouTube, of course, The Situation Report. You can find us there. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave us a comment, share that content out. That would be fantastic. Really appreciate you joining the conversation today and look forward to talking to you next time.